our local friends over at the 900 series, Tony, he's frequently tapped to do PPIs for people looking at buying Porsches. And Carvana has that whole thing where they'll send the car to you and you have like 24 hours or a week or something. Yeah. And he said that they got a car from Georgia or something, and clearly it had been in the water. When they started pulling the panels off, they're like, this car has been, this is definitely a flood damaged water. But no salvage title. Yeah. The title was washed.
To relieve us of liability, I have heard from secondary sources is Carvana got in a lot of trouble for title washing.
Yes.
For exactly that. So they would shift cars around that were, in fact, in Florida or Louisiana during the hurricane and were submerged, and they would wash the title and sell them as perfectly fine vehicles.
Yeah, it's happening. Do it.
I got stage fright. All
right, you suck at this. Welcome to Do or Die, the Porsche podcast, where we had Miami Yay trying to start out the show, but we'll give him another shot. Miami Yay, here we go, buddy. Whammo, snap, do it.
Hi, welcome to the Do or Die podcast.
Oh my God, the podcast.
Listen, I can't, man. It's Wade. He's a professional. So let him do it.
Porsche.
I'm an entourage.
Big asses.
It's chicks with big asses and
Porsches.
Wade Bennett is a talented YouTuber with actual subscribers and followers, and he has agreed to come here and hang out with us since Dwayne Wick is out of town in the UK. Wade, thanks for ruining your career and hanging out with us. How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. Of course, anytime. The seat was available, and rumor has it I might not leave from the seat in the weeks to come if he decides to never come back. We'll see.
Not that, I don't want this getting out because nobody, but, my vote was, we're going to can Wick, and we're going to go with Wade.
Wow.
Wick is in the UK. He's gonna like download the most recent episode. He's gonna be on the airplane. He's gonna be halfway over the Atlantic when he realizes that he's been replaced. Sorry, Dwayne. Just kidding. Can't wait for you to get back, Wick. Get back in here. But we still do want Wade to be part of the show more often. I think we should get him down here on the regular. Just saying. Also, Rami is out of the studio this evening, so. We got Chef in the chef cam. Look at that. Chef is asleep with his silly little hat. How you doing, Chef?
I'm good.
What is that? Is that a pork pie? What type of hat is that?
This is my pork pie Miami J hat.
I got him in. I mean this in a heterosexual way. Pork pies suit you. Yeah.
What would you know about heterosexual way?
Not much, but
look, I thought Chef was going to go get pizza. That's all I thought. That's all I know. But apparently not. Anyways,
$20 burritos.
$20, the $100 burritos that Rami is always so happy about. Maybe we can salvage this episode, huh? You like that? That was a little bit of a segue.
Now I know why he gets the big bucks.
Wade, would you ever consider buying a car with a salvaged title? What do you think of salvaged titles?
I think I'm 50-50 on it. It depends on the story. It depends on how long ago it was salvaged, and it depends on how well it was put back together. I think that there's an argument either way, and I also think it may depend on the car. I realize that's a very wishy-washy answer, but I'm overall not opposed to it. Not opposed to it.
Actually, that's a good answer, right? So if you take, for example, a classic Porsche, and JP, I spoke to you about this a while ago, right? So for a period of time, air-cooled Porsches were worth $10,000 or $15,000. And when I was looking for my car, I was on Bring a Trailer. It was a gorgeous 993, black on black, 40,000 miles, everything you would ever ask for. And it had a salvage title. And the story was the original owner, he got hit in the right rear quarter, didn't do any structural damage, just had to repair the fender and paint. And the repairs were like $8,000. The car was worth like 15 or 20, whatever it was at the time. And the insurance company totaled it out. So he had a salvage title for what would effectively be a minor fender bender. Mm-hmm. So, stories like that.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. And especially on these older cars, if it's been 15, 20 years, things have been repaired, things have been restored, resto modded, whatever, probably not a big deal. But, on your 2014 Hyundai Elantra that's been, in 4 accidents and through 3 auctions. No.
Yeah, it all comes down to why it was salvaged, and then how much is it now? Because like if the car, you're absolutely, Jay, you're right about the whole classic Porsche thing and classic cars in general. But classic Porsche, since this is a Porsche podcast, we can always talk. I mean, in 2004, how much was a 964 worth? It was worth maybe 15, 20, 25 at best on a good day. Mm-hmm. The nicest one in the world was 20, 25. You could get an RSA for 25 grand, 30 grand back in 2003, 2004. And that was a thing.
And to steal, your terminology, right? Even though it's a repair, I mean, it's a damage repair, not a repair. The car doesn't know that it's a $20,000 car. And when you went to get that car repaired correctly, it was still expensive. The guys that painted Porsches still charged a lot of money for it. Guys that repaired it, and the parts were still expensive, so they were totaled out frequently for minor damage.
You get a minor fender problem. A minivan pulls out a Target and takes out your front fender and your front bumper, and that's $15,000 worth of repairs. Well, boom, that's you're easily over half the value of the car. The insurance company is going to say it's an old car, get rid of it. And a lot of those cars, unfortunately, weren't fixed from there. They were just like thrown away. They were the car was totaled. It's gone. See ya.
Can you insure a salvage car like through your insurance company?
Absolutely.
For any
Absolutely.
Kind of
you can, but
value,
it becomes difficult, right? So I think,
for a value.
and where I was going to go, right? So back in the day, the car wasn't worth a whole lot. So there was no agreed value policy. It would be ridiculous. So they're all insured through your standard carriers who are going to look at something like that and not look at the car for what it is or what it may be and salvage it out. So fast forward with the value of these cars, I think if it's done correctly and the story checks out and it's verifiable, your agreed value carriers like your Haggerty or Grundy or whoever it may be probably will not have a problem insuring a salvage title.
So, and how much do you really know? Because like we know a guy that flew his car 100 yards off the road and did 60,000 in damage, and that car has a clean car record. So how much do you really know anyway?
Well, but the thing is, though, I mean, like, if you were to take a classic Porsche and slide it off the road now, the cost of repairing it's going to be much higher, but the value of the car is much, much higher. It's the threshold for totaling a car is much greater when you have a car that's worth $125,000 and it needs $30,000, $40,000 in repairs. Well, okay, that's not a totaled car. But it's like what you want to avoid is a car that's been like severely bent.
Yeah.
And that's the question, because with a $30,000 or $40,000 on a 964, it could just be the plastic bumpers.
Yeah.
With no body work at all.
It's important, right? So here's the thing, right? So, as I was shopping around and looking, you learn, and I kind of knew, but you learn Carfax is maybe a barometer, right? Not everything shows up. Sometimes incorrect information shows up. So it's always prudent to take a car and get it PPI'd or checked out by a specialist, because you don't want to, at least in my opinion, if the car had structural damage, the frame was bent and it was cut and re-welded and put on a jig, for me, that's a hard no. And really, a lot of those cars, that isn't going to show up on a Carfax. So, it's kind of using all the tools at your disposal. And the most valuable is to actually have the car inspected, because you will be able to tell if the car was damaged, particularly if there was frame damage. The repairs you're going to see them.
Yeah, like you said, Carfax only goes so far, and especially on something that's a little older. It may have some Carfax for some years for some owners who took it to the right places where it's documented, but a vast majority of the time, it's a visual, in-depth inspection that's going to tell the story more than anything else.
You still don't know anything about the car. First, let's just take a case example. JP, would you buy a GT2 RS previously owned by Rami with a clean car history on Carfax?
Yeah, I mean, we know the answer to that question. I mean, well, and that becomes then a matter of like numbers, right?
Right.
I mean, car history, and our good friend Solomon just sold his 2016 GT4 on Bring a Trailer, and that car had 64,000 miles. He got $91,000. Most people, experts, myself included, thought at best he's going to get 75 grand for this car with that kind of miles, and that's not no accidents. Yeah. But the reason why that car brought $91,000 was all because of the ownership history. Yeah. I mean, let's face it. If you're talking about a 911 SC, from 1978. There's no Carfax back in 1985. Yeah. That thing could have been completely wrapped around a telephone pole and then straightened out and fixed. The only way you're going to know if there were any kind of previous damage and repaired is going to be a thorough PPI, pre-purchase inspection, which is why that's something that is so incredibly important when you're buying a classic car.
Absolutely. And I like to put this out there now with the values of these cars where they are. And, where the indicators are that they're going, a savvy owner that has an accident in that car, he's going to pay for it out of pocket. He's going to go to a shop. He's going to pay cash. He's going to make sure that shop doesn't report it to Carfax and it's good to go. Because, whether you drive the car or whether you're the guy that stores it away, unfortunately, they're viewed as investments now, right? Or, even if they're not investments, you don't want to lose money on something so valuable. So it's worth shelling out 30 or 40 grand on a car that's had an accident because you'll make it up on the back end.
And I think the inverse of that too, if you're a savvy owner and you use Carfax to your advantage. I know over at German Motors, for example, they'll document every service item for everything that car does. And for someone, like Solomon or like me, I just got my car service from them, a long list of things, all well documented. It could be a positive.
Yeah, and very, very true, because I got my Carfax and my car's been a trophy and it's always been serviced, and it shows every oil change.
Did you say you got your car back?
My car's not back yet, Chuck.
Okay, just checking. As long as I can grind it a little longer, I'm going to use every opportunity.
Chef loves grinder.
I thank you, JP. That is fact, by the way.
Fact. Yeah. It's fact.
Yeah. Chef loves grinder. So I mean, one thing that, I think where Carfax comes in and where it's important in salvage titles, there's no way I would ever consider a modern car salvaged. Let's say a 2016 GT4, right? Yeah. If you saw one of those that was salvaged, hard no way. There's no amount of repairing that car that could ever make it right. Modern cars have too many modules and gizmos and things and stuff that are just not repairable once they're broken.
Well, to your point too, that's an expensive car from the get-go.
Yep.
So for it to get to the point where not just the insurance companies, there's a couple things here, right? Each state is different. So there's a law, like in Nevada, I know for a fact that your car has to be 65% of the value of the car to repair it. And it's mandatory after that number that it's a salvage title. So if you've got a car that's a $150,000 car and it's salvage, that means whatever 150 times 0.65 was the cost and then some to repair it. That's some pretty serious crap. That car is definitely not something I'm looking at that point.
I don't know. My car just cost $97,000 to repair.
But that's because you don't know how to drive and you blew the motor.
The
thing that says red line, you're supposed to stay away from that.
Well, yeah, but your car had an engine failure. You didn't wreck the car, so there's no chance of a salvage title.
But you know what? That brings
an
up
engine explosion.
That brings up something I didn't think about. So let's just say that your car wasn't warranted, right? And the motor blew, and you didn't have $97,000 laying around to pick up, and let's just say the car gets repoed. Is that a salvage at that point? Because the motor's dead. Somebody's got to pay $100,000 to get that car back on the road. What do?
Turn tricks.
If the bank now owns that car and they take it to auction, what happens?
Yeah, I think you can actually salvage a car if the engine failure is so great that it ruins the total value. I don't know.
$100,000 anyway. Yeah. Any way you slice it.
Yeah. I mean, if it gets repoed before that's settled, then that's a different story. But because the bank doesn't care, right? I mean, if you have a GT3 RS and the engine blows up, you don't have the money to repair it. That's $100,000 bill. You don't have that money. Do you go to your State Farm agent and go, hey?
You can't. What do you do? It's not an insurance item at that point. So there's two ways to go. Like if you have a note on it and you default and they repo it, now what do they do? If not, if you don't give it back and you make payments on it, you have to fix the car. So there's no, that I never thought about that. What happens if that car went to auction, with a totally blown motor.
It'd be interesting if someone out there watching this show can let us know, because I don't know. I have heard of people totaling their cars because of engine failure, big, huge, catastrophic engine failures.
But that's on you as the owner. Insurance doesn't cover.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I've heard of people totaling their car. By totaling, I mean going to their insurance company and saying, "Hey, this car's totaled," and them being compensated by their insurance company. I think some insurance companies will cover that.
Really?
What they won't do, it's not that they'll repair the car though. So that's the difference.
They'll pay you out for the car.
Yeah, the car's total. So like if the car got hit and you couldn't drive it, well, then the insurance company's going to pay the bank note if there is one, or give you a check, and then the car goes off to an auction somewhere.
And you're sure about that's interesting. I've never heard that before.
There's a YouTuber, a car YouTuber, who had a brand new C63 that hydrolocked. So he went through a big puddle. Basically, it wasn't, in his words, that big of a puddle. It was however many inches, but a brand new car, and went through it. And by the time he got out of it on the side of the road, there he was. Car was hydrolocked, and it was totaled out, and fought with insurance and all that. But that is an example of something that's not an accident, but it
is an accident though. That's the thing, because I actually had a good friend of mine that had, back in the early, as JP would say, aughts. He had a brand new 7 Series. Same thing, drove through a puddle, and
that was considered an accident.
It's an accident. It's unfortunately. It's an at-fault accident too, because you should have known not to drive through a puddle, which is ridiculous. But yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, did you guys remember that video of the guy in the Bugatti that crashed his car into the water?
Very famous.
Very famous video. This guy here.
He did it on purpose, though, right?
You guys tell me. Here's the video right here. You watch it. Can you see it on the screen?
Yeah, I can see.
Yeah. So he's driving along. I don't even think he's on the road. Right.
That looks like he's in Florida too, which is no surprises there.
He claimed that something jumped out in front of him, right? Mm-hmm. And clearly that's not the case.
That's not the case. That's
right.
It was straight insurance fraud. Do you guys know where that car is now, by the way?
No. Oh, no.
So Houston Crosta over at Royalty Exotics has that car. He has rebuilt it.
Oh, really?
In the next couple of months, he will have a whole YouTube series documenting how he rebuilt that car.
Wow.
How the hell do you rebuild? Like, those parts are like one-off, right?
Yeah, I mean, you build a whole YouTube channel about that. So that's that's part of the problem with driving a car like that. Everyone's taking pictures of it. You never know if someone's videotaping you.
Well, and
filming you if you're driving something like that.
That wasn't even recent. That was a while ago. Nowadays,
it was a long time ago. Yeah.
And, on the point of Carfax, everything about a car nowadays is documented. Every auction is online. Every listing, every picture, every VIN, everything. And there's apps like VinWiki that have just people who took a picture of your car at the parking lot, and it's now documented under that VIN forever. And I don't know, pros and cons. It's good to have it all documented, but I don't know.
Well, and then there's also the possibility that, like a $3 million car like that, they're going to look, if you say to the insurance company, an animal jumped out in front of me and I slammed on the brakes and lost control and went into the bay, but they're going to pull the computer and go, were the brakes slammed on at about that time?
Well,
doesn't look like
that's a good point, right? Because going back to our previous discussion, that's about the only way you total that car. It just got submerged in salt water. It's a write-off.
Yeah.
You couldn't run that car into a brick wall and total it because of the value of that car, right? So, once that thing hits salt water, it's done.
So you're saying it was intentional?
That's definitely established.
I'm not saying that, but if it were to be intentional, the guy did it the right way.
What if?
He did, but he didn't though. The problem was that he claimed that an animal jumped out in front of him and he swerved to avoid it. And clearly he didn't know he was being filmed. And you can see in the video that he just drives off the road into the water. Right?
Yeah, he didn't swerve. He just
drove into the drink. Right?
He also let the engine run. That was revealed later on. He just let the engine run for as long as it could. Not that it mattered, but
I know some people that had to, you're not thinking like, hey, let me shut off my engine.
He purposely just sat there. And
what he should have said is, what he should have had is a cigarette and say, I dropped the damn cigarette in my lap and I was trying to put it out or he should have checked a text or something like that. I was looking at the text and ran off the road. That would have been totally plausible.
JP, you seem to have some pretty good ideas there.
Yeah.
Just
I
speaking
remember
from
seeing this
experience.
video, and so I used to own a Bugatti. I don't know if I ever told you guys that, and that's why I'm now doing this.
On the next
shit
episode
podcast.
of Dur or Fraud.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, think it through, bro. You're going to try to pull a $3 million insurance fraud heist.
Well, again, I don't condone insurance fraud at all, so just putting that out there. But if he wasn't being videoed and there was no video evidence of what he did, he did the right thing. Knowing once your car is in salt water, it doesn't matter. It's done.
When you say did the right thing, what you mean is he did the maximum amount of damage to ensure that the car
he did
would
something
be
that
destroyed.
would ensure that car will be completely totaled.
Yeah.
It is not fixable once it's in salt water.
Yeah, and also a relatively safe way to crash your car without really hurting yourself.
Yeah.
Look, when you talk about salvage cars, it's one thing if you say, okay, the car hit something or was rear-ended or, like maybe you got a Jeep and it rolled over or whatever or something. But all of those things I could maybe live with on a classic car. But if it's a flood damage car, if it's been in the water, forget it. I'm out.
Well, you can't. That's the problem, right?
Yeah.
Like all these cars, like from my knowledge, you're not allowed to sell a car, salvage or not, if it's been submerged in salt water. It's done.
Well, so apparently there was Carvana was in the news a bunch, and our local friends over at the 900 series, Tony, was doing. He's frequently tapped to do PPIs for people looking at buying Porsches, and Carvana has that whole thing where they'll send the car to you, and you have like 24 hours or a week or something before you have to commit to the car. And he said that they got a car from Georgia or something, and clearly it had been in the water. When they started pulling the panels off, they're like, this car has been, this is definitely a flood damaged water. I don't know if it was in salt water or whatever.
So not to relieve.
But no salvage title.
Yeah.
The title was washed.
To relieve us of liability, I have heard from secondary sources is Carvana got in a lot of trouble for title washing.
Yes.
For exactly that. So they would shift cars around that were in fact in Florida or Louisiana during the hurricane and were submerged, and they would wash the title and sell them as perfectly fine vehicles, which is freaking out of control because that is dangerous.
And that's why you get a PPI. Jay, you were talking about in the break that you had heard that Carfax is aggregating information slowly. And you had mentioned you heard something about people having bought cars a year, 2 years, 3 years ago that had clean titles and clean Carfaxes, and then stuff springing up on them.
Yeah.
What was that?
It's not. This is fact. It's not that they were reporting or aggregating data slowly. Carfax is continuously getting data points from other.
Well, that's what I mean.
So they'll pay. They'll get a new source of data, and something that didn't show up before now shows up. So a couple of things that I heard and read. There was people, and unfortunately, it's at least that's what was reported. These are the normal families that go into your local Ford dealership and buy the family car, with everything they have, and they get it, and they have their car, and a couple years later, 2-3 years down the road, they want to go trade it in and get a newer car. Family grows, and they go to a dealer, and dealer pulls a Carfax, and they're like, hey, your car was total, was salvaged, and they're like, what are you talking about? So as I heard that, I was fascinated, and I started reading it. That is a fairly common event, and it's going to continue to happen because Carfax is going to continue to do what they do, which is try to get more and more data sources to make their Carfax more accurate. And unfortunately, people are getting
That happened to a guy here in town that had a Ferrari that he bought brand new, owned it brand new, couple years, went to go get rid of it, and there was an accident report on the Carfax. And it turns out that he parked the car at one of the big hotels, like the Wynn or something. The valet kid backed it into the wall, not enough to do any damage, but they still report that to their supervisor. The supervisor then wrote down the car's information. They submitted to their insurance company just in case. It then went on record.
Yeah, so that's also another thing that
the guy never even knew about.
Well, here's the thing. That's another thing too that I've learned is a common occurrence. You go, you get, somebody hits you in a parking lot. You get a scrape on the bumper. The other company's insurance, pays for it. Everything's good. and it gets reported to Carfax as severe damage or something like that. So there's this is a common thing. So basically my word of advice is, you know, don't trust everything in the Carfax. Don't think that your car is a perfectly spotless.
This is the wisdom of Miami.
It is the
Miami.
Doesn't Carfax
my
have
gift to
that
you.
thing right on there that says that they have like a guarantee? Like that's the most.
So
I think it's on every
I
car,
looked
though.
I looked into that too. You know what that is? They guarantee that if you buy a car that had a salvage title and it didn't report to Carfax, they'll reimburse you. But it's only if it has a salvage title. So we're talking about cars that have been reported severe damage. Which obviously, you know, if you're going to trade in a car at your local dealership and your Explorer or whatever the hell you have has been.
Can we go back to the words of wisdom?
Well,
by
hold on a second,
Miami?
guys. Let's take a break real quick and get a word from our good friends at Godden Porsche of Las Vegas, a dealership you can trust and would never sell anything with a salvage title or any of that. Those guys are totally transparent. Let's hear from them. We'll be right back. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden. This guy. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. If you don't subscribe to Bid Nerds on YouTube right now, I'm going to shoot this 997. If you said, wait, that's a 996, you're a nerd. So subscribe to the new YouTube channel, Bid Nerds.
Get those nerds!
And we are back on the Do or Die Podcast, Porsche podcast that for once we're actually talking about cars and Porsche. I give you guys credit today.
This is actually a good show. I'm surprised. I'm retiring after this. It doesn't get any better for me.
We're peaking. Yeah, it's all downhill from here.
Yeah, we kind of we had an ish show episode before this one, and I don't know. It seems like we got in our stride, and now we took a break, and I think things will probably go off the rails. Have any of you guys actually bought a salvage? Have you ever had one?
No, but my wife did that. Like unbeknownst to me, she went out when we had a nanny and we needed a nanny car, and she didn't tell me. Next thing I know, she's like, "Hey, you know, we got to go pick up this Range Rover Evoque that's coming in." I'm like, "Oh, why do we have to go so fancy for the nanny?" "Oh no, I got a great deal, salvage title, and we got to send her over to the shop."
She knew.
So it gets better. So we send it to the shop in North Las Vegas to get it looked at. I'm like, "Oh shit, man." So I drive over there, and the guy looks at the car and he goes, "Yeah, it's good. It didn't have structural damage. They could repair it and all that." And I'm like, "Hey, can you tell her that how lucky she got? Like, this isn't normal." And the guy's like, "Yeah, don't do it again." Fast forward 3 months, and basically she goes, "Hey, I got a car coming, next Tuesday." I'm like, "Wait, what?" So she bought a Lexus IS 300, but this one here's kind of going back to here's where I would buy a salvage. She bought a brand new Lexus. Mm-hmm. It got hit with hail damage on the dealer lot. Oh. It literally had 23 miles on it. Brought it back. Wow. And had it repaired. And the car's great. It doesn't.
It's almost a hidden gem.
Yeah, it doesn't have a warranty and stuff, but the car is freaking brand new. Still have the car. Car is great. So something like that I would do.
Does a Lexus even need a warranty? Jeez.
No. I mean, we had that car, and she doesn't take care of cars well. But that car is great. I drive that car sometimes. But.
So I'm curious. I'm surprised that she came back with that. I got the salvage title. Like I got the car. It was a good deal. It was. I think especially in younger people who are out buying cars, they don't know. They're not told, and they like find out, and they're like, "What do you mean it was a salvage title?"
Yeah.
It was. So I'm intrigued by maybe a slow transition out of this like well-documented car history scheme that we're in, because it seems like a lot of people aren't taking that into consideration right now. A lot of younger people who are buying cars, and it's kind of odd.
Yeah, I think it might go back to what we talked about in the earlier episode, where they're not a car generation, right? Yeah. They're not savvy. Like when I was growing up, it was aspirational. I wanted a car. I knew all about cars. I knew what a salvage title was. I knew not to buy a salvage title. But yeah, like these guys are, I don't think they're not in tune. They don't know what it is.
Yeah, and I mean it's a shame because especially some modern cars that get put together with, gum and tape, basically, it sits on a buy here, pay here lot, and you get a screaming metal death trap of a Honda that you just don't know, that you sell to a young person who paid, $6,000 for it. That's, that's dangerous. That's tough.
And that's a good point. There's absolutely an industry, a business built around this.
Yeah.
Well, that's not new too. I mean,
Yeah,
look, when
yeah.
my wife bought her first car, so like I'm talking way back, she financed her first car. She bought this piece of crap old Mustang from one of these buy here, pay here type lots. Like in Pennsylvania, I think it cost her, the dealership probably paid $1,500 for this car, and they charged her like $5,000 plus a bunch of other fees. She had no idea what she was doing. She was like 27. She'd never bought a car before in her life. Her previous husband kind of dealt with that stuff, and she had a jalopy or whatever, and so she went out and bought this thing. She wanted to move across the country. This is the car that I met her in. This thing was the biggest pile of crap, and she paid and paid and paid and paid on this car, and it turned out it did have a salvage title too.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like, she didn't know. She was like, okay, they got like $3,000 from her down.
Yeah.
Which was probably worth 2 or 3 times what the car was. Yeah, we can get you financed. And she got in that pile of crap and drove it across the country.
Yeah,
I mean,
it didn't have a salvage title, but I had experience with that as I was younger with a Jeep.
Yeah.
And it was ridiculous. And then, you learn, because I like to learn from being stupid. And God, I have a lot of experience being stupid. That business model, it's not about cars. It's a finance business, right? They know, you're absolutely right. She put down more than what they paid for the car. And they know probably 8 out of 10 times they're going to go get that car back and they're going to resell it again. Yeah. So that $1,500 car very well, most likely made them 30 or 40 grand.
Yeah.
It's
They made a
ridiculous.
lot of money on that car, but that was the thing. So here's another thing. I mean, what about so I had this was probably in 2010, 11 or something. I had a daily driver. I had a 1992 Saab 900 turbo coupe.
Was your husband upset when you got rid of that?
I was upset. I love that car, man. That thing was awesome. That was the best car ever. Anyways, so this 900, somebody hit it in a parking lot. I mean, this car was maybe worth at that time, $3,000, maybe. On a good day. And it was parked. Somebody backed into it. And, that's not what... that was a different time. That car didn't get sold. So I was in a parking lot, and a guy in a big, huge pickup truck was in front of me. And he stops, and I stop. I've got probably 2 car lengths between him and me. All of a sudden, he throws it in reverse and just backs up into the car. And just because he was in a big, huge truck, and he just it just ripped the hood off this car, right? The hood on one of those is only worth, you can get a hood for $500. No big deal, right? It barely did it. So I went and got anyways, the car was totaled because the insurance company said, the car's only worth $3,000.
Yeah.
And the repair was going to be $2,500. So they wrote me a check for $3,000, and I went and got a $500 hood and just kept driving that thing. It was great. Yep. I was like, okay, hell yeah. Can I do that again?
And I'm not, I tangentially know about Saabs, right? But, some Saabs like that turbo I don't know if that's what those things are fantastic cars, and they're worth a lot of money now.
Yeah. Yeah. They finally shot up. They were worthless forever. They're kind of like a 964 in that sense. They were poo-pooed forever, and now everyone realizes how great they are. They're one of the closest cars to, if Porsche ever made a front-wheel drive car, when you close the door, it kind of has that same solid click. It feels like it's built out of a single piece of steel. Anyways, we're talking about Saabs. But, I wound up selling that car years later to someone with a salvage title for the same amount of money. Nobody cared because it was just a cheap car.
You were transparent about that salvage title?
You couldn't...
Such a sad sob story.
Sad sob story. Obvious joke. Man, I missed that sob. I would totally rock one of those.
And Chef's awake again.
Chef
I woke back up.
Yeah.
He wakes up for his meds every, 2
look,
hours.
a lot of guys that do the RWB projects or backdates and stuff like that. I don't think I would ever do... I had that 993 convertible for a long time, and, it was all kind of hot rodded out. And we were thinking back in the early, 2012, 13, I was thinking of maybe doing the RWB when it was at the height of
Were you really seriously?
We were really considering it, but
Really?
I was like, I'm not going to cut the fenders of a perfectly good car, so forget it. But I always figured if somebody hit it, hell yeah. If somebody sideswiped it or whatever, I would never cut a good fender, but if your fender's already dented,
Look, different strokes for different folks. RWB aesthetically doesn't really do it for me. I think they're cartoonish, but watching him work, and I've watched many videos. And the guy I bought my car from, in fact, had a couple of those, and he had a video of Nikai-san, and I cringe, man. He takes an angle grinder,
the
just starts.
hack. That's not. I don't want to get into RWB and him what he does, but if we would have done it, I just would have bought the kit and just done.
I would I would venture to say, like, same thing with my car, right? Because I contemplated, I was getting the motor rebuilt. Maybe I'll make it a wide body, right? Because I don't plan to sell it. But I would do something like that. I wouldn't do the RWB, but I would maybe do
a GT2 body kit, like Rami's roof or something like that. You
Something
put the
like
riveted
that.
fenders on, do it right.
Yep.
But again, wouldn't do any of that unless the fenders were already hit. So if anything, hell, my backdate car right now, if somebody crashed into that, I would totally wide body
So
it.
JP, that's an interesting concept, right? Because I've been kind of looking at this, from my knowledge, the backdating thing came along, particularly with the 964s. One, because the platform is very good. But most likely, guys outside of Singer were looking at that car because it was cheap. Yep. It was the cheap one. So now that the 964 arguably is the one, what do you think happens with the backdate thing? Do you think people are still paying? Would somebody pay the premium on? Because call me crazy, but like your average 964 coupe, you're 85, right? Yep. 80, 85 minimum. Somebody going to pay that and then go through the expense of backdating it? Is it worth it now?
I don't think anybody does a kind of like a base type backdate project on a 964. I think they're doing those on SCs and maybe Carreras and stuff like that, but not a 964, unless it's a Singer. Like if or someone that's super high end. If you're going to embark on that project, it's going to be a project where the car is going to be worth $300,000.
Yeah, somewhere where the $100K
right.
for the donor car rolls right in.
You can go to Pelican Parts right now or Sierra Madre or whatever and get the backdate kit. I think I want to say it's like $25,000 or something like that for all the parts, and then it's probably going to cost you another $20,000 to have them all put on. Call it another $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for paint. So if you want to backdate a car, you're going to be in the $50,000 to $80,000 range. Plus the car. Yeah. So, are you going to do that to a 964? Pretty unlikely. If you're going to do that to a 964, you're not doing that kit. You're getting something Singer-esque. You're going
It's not a kit. You're sending that away for somebody
to a builder. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I mean, because like my backdate car, I'm sure someone just bought that kit. But again, my backdate was done back before it was crazy expensive to do. And I suspect it probably may have been something like, they had like we were talking about, maybe the fender got bent or not bent, but might have had body damage or something like that. So that's why they probably did it. It was done a while ago. So, and that was also back when you could get the backdate parts pretty easy. It was easy to come by, long hood fenders and steel, because all that stuff, if you're getting the steel stuff, you can get the fiberglass stuff really cheap. Yeah. But if you want steel fenders, it's going to cost you money. But for back then, for a while there, I mean, long hoods, I remember when long hoods were worth nothing. In the 90s, I mean, you want to talk about cheap.
You're talking original long hoods?
Yeah, I mean,
I thought those cars never. God, dude. Really? They did. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, in the mid-aughts, early aughts, mid-aughts, and the late 90s and stuff like that, you could buy. I remember my buddy, when I had my 914, I had a buddy who had I want to say it was like a 71S or something like that he bought for $5,000.
Wow.
And he just rocked it. And
so that's also another interesting thing, right? Mm-hmm. So the 964 is having its day. Obviously, I'm interested because I have one. Yeah. Do you think that this is a moment and it's generational, that it's now the guys, like when we grew up, we had the 930 turbo on our wall, right? So the generation after us, did they have the 964? Of course, the 964 turbo is outside of this, but do you think that it's having its moment because that generation,
classic cars are always generational. It's when dudes get into their late 40s, 50s, when they get into that part of their life when they have disposable income.
So here's where I ask for your future projections, right? Because I never was a muscle car guy, but I found it fascinating, watching like Barrett Jackson back in the early 2000s and these 69 Camaros and take your pick of whatever were going for stupid crazy money.
Yep.
And now, I don't really pay attention.
The
but they're
boomers are dying.
Yeah, they're like 30 grand.
If you're in your 60s or 70s, you're not going out and buying that classic car that you wanted when you were in high school. You already have it. If you don't have it by now, you're probably not going to get it. Chances are you're going to die, and your kids are going to inherit that car that you always wanted that you got, and your kids don't want it either. So most people are just offload. Those cars are just... they're spiraling to the toilet.
So the question becomes, is that the future of the air-cooled Porsche?
Well, so Porsche as a brand has found itself as an aspirational brand across the board, particularly with 911. So, is any Ferrari ever going to be cheap? Answer is no. Will some Ferraris be worth more or less? Yeah, maybe. They'll ebb and flow a little bit, but the 964 is in the sweet spot because not only is it an air-cooled 911, but it's also the air-cooled 911 that was popular when current 40-year-olds were in high school or college. And so, if you're a tech bro or, you just got a bunch of money from your crypto or something like that, you can finally go out and get that car that was on the wall. I mean, I love 964s. They were the car. The 964s were the car kind of on the tail end. We were in college.
Yeah.
When if you went to college, I didn't go to college, but that we were college age. So but again, air-cooled 911s, they're part of the zeitgeist. It may as well be a Lambo. It's one of those brands where everyone's always going to want.
Yeah, it seems like the general populace is split, right? There's the guys that say they're having their moment. There's the dreamers, the bubble guys. I don't think it's a bubble. And then there's the guys that are looking at it for exactly what you just said. Hey, it's aspirational. It is. I know you hate this word, but it is an analog driving experience. And the more that we get into these electric vehicles and things like that, the more even the younger generation covets that feel. And I actually read something recently that was shocking, that the Gen Z is actually looking and seeking out manual transmission vehicles. Yeah. Kind of like the hipsters with the vinyls and the craft beer. And now
it's artisanal, right?
Yeah.
Artisanal. Yeah. It's Gen Z isn't going out and looking for these cars. It's the hipsters within, it's a small sliver of Gen Zs are going. Yeah. Look, again, all of these classic cars are having a moment because everyone realizes that all these classic cars, everyone's trying to find that under-realized thing that people forgot about, MR2s or Saab 900s or right? There's a bunch of these cars that were cheap for a long time and now worth a bunch of money. So people are digging around going, oh, okay, what else is cheap that should be worth, what else is unrealized in that world? And they're not, and all the modern, once you got to 2000, most of the new cars, once you start putting computer chips in them and stuff like that, they may not be like a modern car, but really a 996 is a modern car.
I was going to ask you, so where is that? And again, I think it's widely known, or at least people what they speculate. But where in your minds, like where if there is such a thing, where is the good value under realized Porsche? Not necessarily it's going to take off to the stratosphere like an air-cooled car, but is there such a thing these days?
No, there just isn't. I mean, the 996 would have popped more if, the cheapest ticket is a 996.1, but they're just not that great a car. They are great. They actually are pretty nice cars, but they have some major flaws.
So what you're looking at for a good coupe manual 996.1, you're in the 30s now?
Nah, you're still in the 20s.
Okay, but it in your opinion, it's not going much higher than that, right?
No, I don't see those taking off. I don't see anyone. So if in 2001, to be 40 years old, how old were you in 2001? Someone do some math. So you were 20 something, right? Yeah.
17.
No, you'd be 30 something. No, you'd be 20.
40,
sorry,
you'd be
40 now. Yeah, I was going backwards.
17.
Yeah, you'd be 20 something.
Yeah, so you'd be 20 something, whatever.
It's
most
23 years ago.
Early.
Yeah,
Listen,
yeah.
listen, Einstein.
Add 17 to it.
All I did was
Math.
look how old I was in 2001
Math.
and subtract it.
Jeez.
Wade's like, I don't know, I got a calculator.
Wade's like, shit, man.
My
I-
car-
my
Wade's
told
my
us we
parents
wouldn't
didn't
have
even meet each other
calculators.
yet.
Wade's like, my car tells me this shit. I don't know what the answer
They
is.
told us we wouldn't always have a calculator in our pocket. Wade,
Yeah,
what
they
do you
lied.
think? What do you?
So
You're an actual young person.
yeah, so on your point, I was at Barrett Jackson this last weekend in Las Vegas. I go all the time. I monitor, collector car prices and stuff, and they've had to shift the cars that they take because of sort of a younger generation who's more interested in stuff from the 80s and the 90s.
Okay.
Prices aren't too crazy on some of the stuff, but they're getting there. The question that I have for you guys is, the whatever you want to call it, older generation, the boomers, the whatever, that have all this disposable income, that they're retired and they spend $80,000 or $120,000 on a '69 Camaro. Do you think the younger generation is going to have that money 20 years from now, 30 years from now, to prop up the cars of the 80s and the 90s? Because there's always that question of like, we're all
Hold
broke.
on.
Hold
We're
on,
not-
but
It's
that-
not that. Yeah. So
But wait a second, hold on. That's a great point because the boomers don't necessarily. So the guys that are like to JP's point, the guys that are 60 and 70 and retired, the boomers, I don't think they're buying these cars. Those cars they've already been bought.
yeah, the boomers are done.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't have disposable income. If you're retired, you don't have disposable income. I mean, maybe if you're super rich or whatever, that bubble has already gotten to its peak. They're out of the buying thing. So it's the 40s and 50-year-old guys now that are buying the 80s and 90s cars. So what your question really is, Wade, is if it's 2023 right now, in 2043, right? So the 20-year-old guys now, are they going to be out looking for 20-year-old 991s? Or 992s, and
Will
that's
they,
the big question.
Can they afford it, dude? Is the money
depends
there?
on-
That's
it
a good
depends
point
on-
because the younger
Will they even be allowed
or
to
be
drive in
interested,
those
yeah.
years?
there's
I
a
don't
couple
think so.
things there. The Gen Z, they're kind of in trouble, right? Like the things have changed, but they're not interested in cars now, by and large. Are they going to be interested? Is there that 17 to 20-year-old guy that's looking at a 991.2 or whatever and just being like, oh man, that's on the wall? I don't see it. First of all, I have a 991.1 GTS. It's a great car, but I look at it aesthetically, it's okay, it's pleasing, but it doesn't stir the emotions, right? Would I have a poster of it?
I don't know if it's. I don't think it's about whether or not it stirs emotion. I think it does. If you're a 20-nothing-year-old guy and you actually are a car enthusiast, you want that car.
Really?
That car is definitely getting you. Yeah,
you want it, but it's like maybe because there was less, things were rarer. Like a Porsche was a Porsche, and you had the 911, you had the 911 Turbo, right? You didn't have the S, the GTS, the GT3, the GT3 Touring.
I think we're getting lost in the weeds on the specific model. I'm not saying a GTS in specifically. I'm saying just a 99. There's a version of the 991 that some 21-year-old that doesn't have any money would murder any one of us to get, right? The question is whether or not that car will even exist in 20 years. I mean, these cars are disposable.
Yeah.
They're not going to last like a 964
If you look at what will eventually go wrong with that car, your PDK, right? All the electronics, it's at that point, is it worth it? Will they last?
Wade has told us on 2 different episodes, he's made the point of how long do you have your cell phone? Do you have a cell phone from 7 years ago? Imagine, look at your 991, just a typical 991 or 992. How many freaking flat screens are on that stupid car, right? It's full of electronic gizmos that in 20 years, Wade, will any of that stuff work?
I don't think so. And we're kind of in this weird gap right now where I think cars from like let's say 2018 or 2016 are probably the last versions of cars that are like technologically comfortable, still modern enough, but could still be swappable and fixable. Anything from 2018, 2019, 2020 and newer that has 3, 4, 5 different screens and all this stuff that's all software based, 20 years from now are you going to turn that car on and is anything going to be supported?
Yeah, and
Absolutely not.
I think if I understand you, it's because the technology is now so pervasive in those cars. It's woven into it's your gauges.
It's your air conditioning. It's your glove box that you press on the screen that it opens. It's too much, and it's a shame because this sounds dumb, but you talk about EVs and sustainable and recycle and all this stuff, but these cars are just not cars from the 80s and 90s that still go on the road today and are completely workable and fixable and you can do everything with them. You are not going to have a 40-year-old Tesla on the road. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. Well, because first of all, you cannot repair that in your garage. There's nothing you could do that car.
No.
So I just saw
technicians with specified tools. The only and code that are going to be able to have access
with the software, right?
Yeah.
So I just maybe I'm wrong, but I thought I heard that the right to repair law that they were fighting for, I think they shot it down.
Yeah, that's been a big battle for a long time. It's a question of can you repair things that are yours that you own, or can authorized places, shops, whatever, repair things if you bring them in. And a lot of companies in tech and in automotive, and even there's a big John Deere right to repair thing a couple of years ago where farmers couldn't repair the tractors and they were in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, what do you mean? Things have to be fixed, but we're transitioning into this point where things just can't be fixed. There is no right to repair because there's nothing to repair.
Well, and then also, like tech companies like Microsoft and stuff, well, maybe not, I'm not going to name, but they'll build quote unquote features into their technology that obsolesces them
for
a period of time.
Planned obsolescence has been around forever. Look, never mind the fact that in 20 years, how much autonomy will you be even allowed to drive? I've said it a million times on this show and all my other shows. Off-road is going to be the last bastion of car enthusiasm, because the grid is just going to get, as soon as autonomy becomes viable, self-driving cars are going to be few and far between. So the only place you're going to be able to drive something is going to be off-road. So if you want a long-term classic car investment, I say get an off-road Jeep or an old Defender or something like that. But what do you guys think out there? Would you ever buy a salvaged car? And do you think that if you did, it would be allowed to be driven on the road in 20 years? Let us know in the comments below. Hit the subscribe, like, and notification button. Wade, you going to come back?
I may as well. This seat, I think, is slowly transitioning to have my name on it.
Yeah.
Looks good. Looks good on you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I think that's happening. I guess, Dwayne, if you're flying across the Atlantic right now and finding out I guess that's kind of a modern thing, right?
It's true.
You find out that
we should break up with them over a text message.
No, I think that's old hat. I think that's old school. I think the way to break up with someone is on a podcast.
You just ignore them. You just
act
that's
like ghosting. That's also old.
You never existed. Yeah. Who's this guy showing up?
We're gonna just ghost you. We're gonna be like,
security.
Who's the tall guy? I don't know that one. No, Dwayne, we want you back. Get back in here. Travel safe. Chef, are you awake?
I'm good.
All right, he's there. Thanks for hanging out, guys. We will see you on the next episode of Dur or Die. Wade, how do we watch your stuff? Tech Daily.
If you really want to, youtube.com/techdaily. If you want some smartphone goodies and stuff like that. But that's where I'm at. See you over there.
You do. All right. Thanks, guys. See ya.